Hello and welcome to another video with me, Sky Fellowship. I'm kinda struggling to see whether or not things are video game story time or talking points, and the whole point was I actually wanted to not so much create a brand but create actual videos that had a section so that way if people wanted to avoid certain things then they could do. But unfortunately I've realised that a lot of the times they do kind of melt together, and I do know the actual difference between when I want to tell a story and when I want to just talk about something, but it's so much of a nuance that I'm thinking I might just drop it completely from the video. So instead, and there's still going to be a lot that I've already recorded as video game story times and talking points. Like, this might just be a slowly gets phased out. Again, it's a hobby and my videos will evolve like with everything else as I decide what to do next. But today's episode of whatever this ultimately is, you'll have already seen it's about reading, essentially. And it's because reading has been one of the most important things to me all my life. When I was at school, I used to be the book nerd, and I was always the dork reading all of the new books that would get in, and my reading ability was rather good. I know that might sound weird, like a lot of this is going to make sense real soon, but basically, whenever we'd get a box of new books in, and we had a reading lesson in class, and our school just used to do a case of the teacher needed an hour, so everyone just pick a book and read. I would get through the entire box of books in the entire lesson. And obviously these are smaller kids' books where the whole point is they don't take long anyway, but I actually got to a point one time where I'd read through the entire box and my teacher didn't believe me, and I'm like, feel free to quiz me because I've got nothing else to do. That's why I came up here. I said I'm bored because I've got nothing to do. I've got nothing left to read. You said only take out of those box, and I've already read everything in there. And she actually did kind of quiz me a little bit on a couple of them, and I got everything right, and I was like, yeah, I have actually read these and I have retained the info. I am a huge reader. I am an avid reader. I read a lot and I read pretty quickly. And it got to a point where she found something for me to do. But then I had my near-death moment where basically as a kid I was hit by a car. I hit my head off the pavement landing, and I kind of lost the ability to read. It's not that I went illiterate, I just lost the ability to read for the longest time because I had severe migraines now and headaches and some of the most horrific things, and eye strain can make that worse, and as my vision has deteriorated as well, it made it more difficult to read. And eventually we got to a point where e-readers start to exist, and that was a sliver of hope, and it did get to the point now where you can get e-readers with such large screens that I can actually make the text size big enough to be able to read and read and read, and also there's no blue light on the screen, and I can change the backlight and all of these things that make it possible for me to actually read. And when I actually got back into reading, when I was a teenager, I found a movie that almost no one seems to enjoy. Even people who I think are fans of the book tend not to enjoy the movie as much, and I actually get it. But the movie was John Dies at the End, and it was one of those cultural moments where it not so much became a meme, but it was one of those cult moments where everyone was like talking about it, and it was either you loved it or you hated it. And then the movie came out essentially, and because I'd heard all of this further about the book and everything, I actually, except I didn't realise it was a book, by the way, I should mention. I actually thought the further was about the movie, so I watched the movie, ended up really, really, really enjoying it. Then I found out it was a book series, and when I finally got the ability to read, I basically read John Dies at the End, and then read the sequel of... I probably should have actually wrote this down first, because I know the sequels, but it's trying to remember the full, long, complicated titles of all of them, because the second book is essentially, this book is full of spiders, don't open it, no, seriously dude, don't touch it. If memory serves, that's the full title. And then we have the third one is What the Hell Did I Just Read? Which, honestly, I don't think there's been a more apt title for a book ever. And the fourth one is If This Book Exists, You're in the Wrong Universe. And basically, there's a fifth one coming out, by the way, this year. And the fifth one is something along the lines of, this novel isn't full of giant crabs, a novel about giant crabs, or something like that. And I can't wait for it. It comes out in November, and seriously, I cannot wait for it. I've just actually reread all 4 of the John Dies books. There's technically a 5th one because he wrote one that was actually going to be the second movie, but that then fell through, so the book then became the second book again, and he changed the ending, and that one's something like John and Dave and the Temple of Adu. And I wish that growling was supposed to be nonsensical, but that was an actual genuine attempt at trying to pronounce how the fuck you pronounce that book. So yeah, suffice to say, those books are weird, and honestly, I strongly recommend them. If you've never actually looked into them before, they are essentially Lovecraftian horror mixed with real-world philosophy, and they're written by... this is one of those really difficult ones, because almost everything I see about this, I have to be careful, because the style of writing the author does, almost everything's a spoiler. So I'm going to say, look for David Wong, because that's the pen name that he used for the first few books, and then he changed to his actual name of Jason Pagan. And basically, that's all I could really say about why he used the pen name, other than I think it's safe to say the pen name is David Wong because the main character is David Wong, because it's John and Dave, and David is the Dave. So if you've never read them, they are, as I say, Lovecraftian horror mixed with real-world philosophy, and that's honestly where the actual horror comes in. Jason has a way of writing so that you'll read something, you'll have an existential crisis, you'll realise how fucked everything is, and then within a chapter, he'll have found a way to convince you that it's okay. But is it really okay? Is it okay? Because, I mean, it could so not be okay, because look at everything I've just spelled out to you a chapter ago. Can you really be okay? It's that kind of book. It's the kind of book that will give you an existential crisis. If it doesn't, then I'd be astonished. And when it does, it'll freak you out, and then you'll find a way to kind of make you feel better. But it'll stick with you, and you'll start questioning things in life. You really will. I honestly cannot recommend them enough. And all of this rambling, again, it does actually have a point. There is also a reason that I'm on Mario Kart at the moment, because I will be swapping to my actual point real soon. But I've read through all of those, absolutely loved them. He has other series as well. He's got a Zoe Ash series about a dystopian future, which honestly is kind of becoming true the more and more we go along, and I can't wait until he writes the next one of those, but I imagine that'll be a little while away, because again, he's only just wrote the 5th book of the John and Dave series, and he also has one other book, which is a standalone book, and it's the, if I'm going to convince you to get into this author, this is the easiest way to do it. I honestly think this is the best book he's ever written. I truly do love the John and Dave series, I really do. He's actually my favourite author, as weird as that might be to say, because I know it's a guy from Cracked, and I've never actually looked into any of the stuff he does on Cracked, but I love his books. And basically, the book is called I'm Starting to Worry About This Black Box of Doom, and it is one of those books that, it's a short read, it came out in 2024, it was my book of the year in 2024, and by the time you're done reading, if it hasn't opened your eyes to a real world problem that a lot of people are kind of ignoring, I'll again be surprised. It's an absolutely fantastic read, and I wish I could actually explain more, but again, he's an annoying author where every little minor thing that I could possibly say could be conceived as a spoiler. It could genuinely kind of warp how you read the book and look at it if I mention literally anything about them. He's an arsehole that way, to be honest. I love him, love his work, truly do, but yeah, he's an arsehole that way, because how the hell do I actually convince people to read his stuff when I can't even talk about it, because, oh yeah, literally everything's a spoiler, even the fact that, on a technicality, the pen name is a spoiler, because it's the main character. So yeah, but all that to say, avid reader, finally got it back, absolutely love being able to read again, and this isn't like a recent thing, this is over the last, to be honest, 5 or 6 years though, but it meant that I've had a lot of reading to catch up on, and reading through the Dungeon Crawler Call series as well. I absolutely love it, and there's a new book of that coming out real soon at the time of recording this. It comes out in about a month, so I've just actually reread all 8 of those. I think there's 8 at the moment, it might be 7, but either way, I read all the way from the first one up to The Inevitable Ruin, which is where it's currently up to. Just as a refresher for the newest one, I'm currently in the middle of reading The Expanse. Absolutely not what I expected. I held off reading The Expanse because I thought it was just generic sci-fi, and I needed generic sci-fi at certain points, and one of those points is when you've just spent ages rereading all of the John Dies at the End series, so I've just had a bunch of horror in my mind, and reading all of the Carl series again, so I've just had a bunch of fantasy, so I was like, you know what, I'm going to go for generic fantasy. Sorry, generic sci-fi. I'm going to go for The Expanse because I just need some generic sci-fi right now, and I've heard a lot of great things about how good it is, but I really was expecting it to just be generic sci-fi. It's so not. It's another one that if you don't know anything about it, I don't want to kind of spoil too much, but I at least can say more about this one, and I can say I adore the writing style. I love the fact that it's basically one chapter of Holden, one chapter of Miller, one chapter of Holden, one chapter of Miller. I love everything about it, the way it's set up. I love the mystery that you're uncovering, because one of them is a ship's captain, essentially, and the other one is a detective, and you're trying to figure out what's going on, because they're both working on things, and it's just one of those that I honestly expected it to just be some generic sci-fi military shooter type thing, and it's not at all. And yeah, all of this whole thing is to set up the fact that I truly am an avid reader. Reading is important to me. Reading is something that has saved my life almost as much as playing games, to be honest. The ability to just lose myself in a book is brilliant. And sometimes I need the ability to actually sit and read and listen to music while I'm doing it. Like, for the most part, with my ADHD, I tend to actually put on video game music. So I'll listen to, like, chiptune music of old Zelda games, or there's a lot of dubstep remixes, or there's a lot of actual great video game soundtracks where they don't have lyrics. And then there's a lot of playlists on services where people have made the playlists specifically for people like me. Apparently, there's a bit of venom here. And the whole point is the make lyricless playlists where it's just instrumental music, and almost without fail give it 3 songs and there'll be a track with lyrics. Almost without fail. But all of this has been to set up the fact that I truly am such an avid reader, so you'd assume I absolutely love it when video games do what I'm about to show. Now, I was hoping the save point for Resident Evil was actually a little closer. I was trying to actually finish Village last night on the Switch 2, because I like playing it on handheld before bed. I play a little bit of Switch, and then I actually read before going to bed. But I got to the point with Resi where I'm like, this is actually at a place where I really need to be able to show this off to be able to do this video, because I've been trying to make this video for a long time. When it comes to video games, if I put a game on, I want to play. And I don't think that is that much of a hot take. I think a lot of people, when they actually put video games on, they want to actively sit and play a game. They want to do something. They want to be active. Because at the end of the day, as much as loads of people like to shit on people playing games and say that we're being inactive or anything, there's ways to work your brain. There's ways to work a lot of things. And being able to sit there and play and enjoy is a lot better than sitting and watching. I'm honestly not a watching person. I struggle with TV and movies these days. It's very rare that I actually manage to watch anything. I basically did Heated Rivals, Shorzy, and Pluribus last year. Oh, and Fallout. Those are the only 4 TV shows in the entire year I managed to watch, and almost all of them are very short, either 6-episode things, or I think in Fallout's case it was 9 episodes, Pluribus was 9 episodes, so you're talking less than 20 hours of TV in an entire year, and I barely watch movies. I really do. I struggle with it. I'll watch a couple, but for the most part, I struggle. So I play games and I read. So games like Resident Evil here, you would think I'd be over the moon when a game gives me a fuck ton of stuff to read. And with Resi, it's not usually that much of a problem, because you get the notes, and the lore isn't exactly that complex to follow. And on top of the lore not being that complex to follow, I've played all of the games, and I've read all of these little notes over the years, and I've never read every single one of them. I've never found every single one of them. And usually, if I'm in a mood where I really, really need to play, I'll just skim read, because Resi does this, like, amazing thing where if it's truly important, it's usually highlighted. So all of that text there was just background lore, and I don't think there is one of these in this lab, if memory serves, and if there is, then we're going to discover it together. But basically, upon doing all of this exploration and everything, in Resident Evil, if there is actually something important, it would, like, that actually you are required to know to push the plot forward. So it could be a case of you open a note and it says there's a safe here. This usually safe is in like yellow, and we had to move the combination to the safe or move the key to the safe will also be in yellow. So it'll be a little way of, yeah, this is the stuff that you need to read, so you can kind of skim through the note. And I'm glad that Resi does that, because I truly do adore Elden Ring. I've beat Elden Ring more times than I can count. I've beat it on randomizers, I've beat it regularly, I've beat it solo, I've beat it co-op, I've beat it co-op with multiple people, I've beat it co-op with one person. I adore Elden Ring. I cannot tell you a single thing about that game's story. Because when I put a game on, I put a game on to play. I don't put a game on to read. And I especially don't put a game on to go around an entire map that, even if I know it extremely well, which at this point I know the map of Elden Ring extremely well. I know where all of the fast travel points are. Like, I do actually have that shit memorized when I play the game, because when I play randomizer, that's the whole point. I need all of those fast travel points because I need to be able to fast travel anywhere in case I need to go looking for a specific item drop in the hopes that it's the item I need. So I know that map so fucking well. But I do not want to at any point put Elden Ring on, go to every area when I'm supposed to go there, pick up every little item that I'm supposed to pick up, read every single item, like their description, their lore, read all of that in a specific order to be able to actually get the story and retain the info. It would ruin my eyes. It would give me such a brutal headache, it's unbelievable, because you're talking about reading tons of tiny little bits of text and that. And it's why this episode is, as much as I absolutely adore reading, and as much as a lot of people love making games that are like full and heavy with lore and stuff like that, like the first one that I ever really discovered like this was the Dragon Age series. It broke me. That was at a point when I could still kind of read, but I could not play that game because of how much reading there was in it and how small the text was. And I sat there the entire time, and it still hits me to this day. We've just had the Mario Galaxy movie. We're getting a Street Fighter movie. We get movies all the time. We get the Fallout TV show, and again, I like the Fallout TV show. We get loads of TV shows. Why the fuck don't people adapt games into books? Because games like this, and I know there are actually Resident Evil books, but as far as I'm aware, they're like teen books and they're not supposed to be like deep story or anything. I might need to actually look into that. And I've just realised I'm literally heading towards the very end of this game, so I'm going to quit this and go back to Mario Kart because I don't want to accidentally ruin the end of a game while I'm talking about this. But why the hell isn't there an Elden Ring book? And I know there's an Elden Ring manga, but as far as I'm aware, the manga is just like a bunch of jokey stuff, and it's a bunch of memes, essentially, in manga form. But why the hell can't we actually get book adaptions of games? I would love nothing more than for someone to turn around and go, yeah, let's just make the Elden Ring book. It's all of the story, all of the lore, everything that's actually in the game. You don't even need to expand on it, to be honest. Just collect it all as a book and let me read it as a book, and that way I'd actually understand what the fuck I'm doing when I'm actually doing all of these fights, because I know that game inside and out, except for the depth. I know all of the shallow stuff, I know all of the combat, I know all of the locations, I know the builds, I know how to fight different bosses as different builds, whether I'm a spellcaster or a faith user or a fucking dexterity person or a strength build. I can do all of that. I'm actually really, really, really good at all of that. Couldn't tell you who 90% of the people actually are. I don't actually know what most of them are, most of their motives are or anything. I know Rani, and that's mainly because when I played co-op, I played with someone who was such a Rani stan. She was absolutely constantly going over and over all the time about all the things that she loves about Rani, and by the end of it, I actually loved Rani. And I was sitting there thinking, I wish I had this level of knowledge for all of the stuff, but I just don't, and I never will, because I'm never ever going to put that game on and sit through and read all of the fucking shit that it wants me to read when I want to play a video game. Because even if I put that on as my... Because I understand there might be some people sitting there going, so hang on a second, you always read before bed, why don't you make that the thing you read? There's no way that I'm going to put on a video game like that and read before bed via that. That's not a healthy way to read. The whole point is, I read on an e-reader that doesn't have a blue light behind it, so I'm not fucking up a circadian rhythm even more than it already is from, you know, the head injury, because all of that got fucked too. So I just really wish there was people out there who cared about this as much as I did, to the point of that we could get... that was a weird blue shell. Either way. So that we could get people actually doing books of the games. And I don't mean... It's kind of hard to explain this. I'm going to swap gears, quite literally, by saying I love Gears of War. I played through all the Gears of War games. I absolutely... that doesn't have that many text things, and the lore things that it does have in the book... Sorry, in the games aren't that important. It's usually a case of picking up dog tags or little notes, and you get a little bit of thing, and that's fine enough. But then there's also a shit ton of Gears of War novels, and most of them are wrote by Karen Travis, who actually went on to write for the third game. Her books are canon, and as far as I'm aware, all the books are canon, and I've read through them all. I truly do love everything that the Gears of War books do, but those books are actual parts of the story that we don't get in the games. That's the whole point of them. You will get, for example, the slab takes place as the actual reason that Marcus is in prison at the start of the first game. As for Fields is part prequel, part during the first game, essentially. Jacinto, I can't remember the full title, it's Jacinto something, that, if memory serves, is the one between Game 1 and Game 2. That's the way those books go. They fill in all of the stuff between the games. Gears of War 4? Or is it 5? It's 5. Gears of War 5 does a time skip where something happens to one of the characters. I don't want to say it because of spoilers things, but something happens to one of the characters, and there's like a 4-month break. And you just don't get any of the story for that 4-month break. One of the books is, like, I think it's the latest book in the Kate series, essentially. The latest book is filling in that 4-month period. It's showing you exactly what happens to Kate, and I need to be careful to say which other characters, because again, otherwise people will be able to figure out what happens to who, so I'm just going to stick with Kate. It basically follows what happens to her during that 4-month gap in the story. And all of this is great, and I absolutely love reading it because it fills in so much that I don't get in the games because they literally couldn't do them, but the games themselves still have enough lore in them and enough story that I can still enjoy the story. I understand books like that exist, and that's great, but I am specifically after a book of the actual game, an actual adaptation. I'm not after a side story that fills in some stuff. I'm not after... hey, this is a what-if scenario. I'm not after anything like that. I want the actual video game that I've just played to be written down in book format. If we can convert things into a movie, if we can convert them into a series, if we can try to do a one-to-one, which, honestly, the only time I can think of, the closest, as much as loads of people shit on it, the Doom movie, the first Doom movie, with Carl Urban and Rosamund Pike, that's actually the closest we've ever came to a one-to-one video game adaptation, because, spoilers, I guess, for the weakest story in video games, because that's the whole point. When Doom was created, there was the whole infamous thing from... Oh, I can never remember which of the Johns said it. It's either John Romero or John Carmack. Either way, they're both very important to Doom, and one of them was like, video game stories are like porn stories. Everyone expects them. They don't have to be good. And Doom doesn't really have that much of a story. And the movie kinda did adapt the Doom story. A bunch of Marines go onto a planet, or go into an area, and with the exception of Rosamund Pike also surviving, the only person to actually get out of it alive is Doom Guy. And in the movie, as I say, it's Doom Guy and his sister, but yeah, it's Doom Guy. Like, that's the whole point of the things. There's a very weak story. Doom Guy's the only survivor. Like, weirdly, Doom is the most accurate video game adaptation that I can think of. And I'm not saying, obviously, it's the best video game movie at the fuck all. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying, weirdly, it's kind of the closest. Although, the Mario Galaxy movie also is weirdly kind of close, mainly because the Mario Galaxy movie feels like a video game in the way of nothing makes sense and you're jumping from moment to moment with absolutely no explanation. It's like a Mario Kart tournament where I'm going from a skull desert like this to, well, the spaceship where I was in before, like the Cloud City with Bowser's Castle and everything, Bowser's Fortress. Like, there's no reason for any of this to actually be one GP. These are set all over the place. It's just a video game. That's how video games work, and that's essentially what the Galaxy movie was. So, I would just really, really love it if we would get to the point where people would do book adaptions of video games, because I don't know why that isn't there, because clearly the people writing this stuff, clearly, like, From Software actually care about lore. I think they're one of the biggest companies out there that truly do care about lore. So From Software, not that anyone at all from Software will actually be fucking watching this video, feel free to make an Elden Ring book, please, just recanting all of the stuff that you've already typed up, just putting it in an order that I actually need the order in to be able to read it, putting it on an e-reader screen so I can make the text size big enough to be able to read it. Give me chapters, give me the ability to actually read your fucking fantastic story, because from what I've heard, it is a fantastic story. Give me that in a book form, because this is one of the other things as well, and it's why I wanted to do this so heavily around From Software. There are so many people who genuinely do not like those games because they complain you don't have a story, because the story is essentially skin deep unless you look for it, and it feels like looking for it is part of the challenge for some people, and that's great. But that also isn't how you really tell a story. And I'm not trying to shit on people who like that. If you're a From Software fan and you love being able to go there and get all that lore, that's fine. But surely if you love all of that lore, you want people who love the game to also be able to get that lore and get it in a format that they can digest. And for me, the way my fucked brain is, I will never ever be able to fucking read the story of that game unless you actually write it the fuck down. I guess on pen and paper, but obviously I'm talking about an e-reader. But unless you actually convert it into a fucking book so that I can actually read the fucking thing as a book on my own terms, sitting reading it before bed, you know? So yeah, I don't know if it's just me, but if not, sound off below. Are there any games out there that you really wish would be turned, the actual game, into a book? Not a side story, not a this is what happened, not a what if, not anything like that. The actual game, a kind of one-to-one conversion of this is all of the text that we've actually got in game, and you could... I'm not even talking about writing in boss scenes or anything, but you could do it that way. You could essentially do it of, okay, so the player has to read all of this lore in a certain order, but the fights are also part of it, like the actual cutscenes, the dialogue that you get when you speak to all of these characters, when you do these boss fights, when you come up to these NPCs. You could still write it in the way of just a random Tarnished is the protagonist of the book, and the Tarnished goes towards the first grave. If memory serves, that is, like, I'm bad with names. I know all of the spawns, I know how to get there, but I'm bad with all of the actual names of stuff. Especially in a game whether it's like Rani, Ranella, Renala, Renila, like, I can't remember how many of the actual R names there are, but there's so many different fucking people who sound so similar, where it's just like one slight different spelling, and I can't remember most of them either. But you could make it so the Tarnished wakes up and goes to the first grave, and any lore info that you would get at the first grave, you get, and then heads towards Margit. I think Margit's the right name here. Margit is essentially the first story check boss. So you could then describe that Margit boss fight, and you don't even need to, like, do a vivid description, I guess, because anyone who's actually reading this, chances are they'll have played the game, so they'll have that knowledge, they'll have the, oh yeah, it's the Margit fight, so I can essentially play through it in my own head, where I'm on the bridge, and Margit's there, and he's throwing the holy daggers at me, and he's like swinging this holy mace at me, and I'm dodging, and I'm stabbing, and I've killed him. And then you could have it move on to, right, now we're going into the Stormgate Castle, and give me all of the lore from Stormgate Castle, and then ending with Godric, and fighting Godric. You know, you could still write it like that. So you could write it in a way that, if you've never played any of the games, and you are just interested in the story, you could still get that as well, because there's also people out there who I know who actually have told me, hey, I would love to be able to play those games, because that's how I like my lore. I like to be able to lose myself in the way it is, and I like to be able to find everything, but I am never ever ever going to be good enough to actually beat those bosses. And I'm in the other boat of, I'm more than good enough to beat those bosses, but I'm never ever ever going to fucking look into the lore like that. And it's annoying. It's like, if only we could kind of combine our efforts here. I could beat the bosses and you could just like read out all the fucking lore to me. That would be perfect. So write it as a book, so that way people who want the lore, who aren't good enough to beat the games, could read through Elden Ring and go, yep, I now actually fully understand this story. I know all of the ins and outs. I know all of the this, that, and the other. And if they want to actually then look into the characters, they could go, you know what? I have no fucking clue who Godric is that I've just mentioned. I'm going to very quickly look up on YouTube someone fighting Godric, and then they could watch the cutscene and watch someone actually doing the fight, and, you know, it would be perfect. But anyway, read. It's important. That's kind of where I want to go here, and I know that might seem like there was a cut there, but there wasn't. There really wasn't. I'm just building to the end of the video now, and I want to say, read. It's important. I understand not everyone is into reading, but seriously, we are going through a very tumultuous time with the planet, and part of it is the fact that people just don't fucking read, and people learn things via the most awful ways to learn them. And I'm not saying everything you read in books is true or anything like that, but I am saying when you've got people out there who are banning specific books because how dare they mention this, and then you've got social media demonizing a group of people, just read, okay? It's important. Read, come to your own conclusions, actually look into stuff that is out of your wheelhouse, essentially. Read stories about people that you aren't. Read stories about queer people. Read stories about POCs. Read stories that you don't have any say in, but you maybe should actually understand, because I'm sick to death of the fact that everyone using every which way to demonize people. Read. Just read. It's important. And again, if there's any games out there that you wish would be turned into a book, mention it in the comments. And maybe one day we'll start a movement where people will actually go, you know what? Let's make the book of... I don't want to say Mario Kart, because Mario Kart's what's currently in front of me at the moment. I'm trying to think... Honestly, again, I know there's a bunch of Resident Evil books. I haven't actually read them. They're about the older games, and as far as I'm aware, they're like teen novels. But maybe I should actually try it to see if it does build on the lore. But there's a lot of things out there. There's a lot of games out there that... I mean, Final Fantasy, to be honest, thinking about it, Final Fantasy might actually even be a good one to turn into a book series. There's a lot out there. Like, I know there's Mass Effect side books, but I don't think there's actual books of what happens in Mass Effect, and mainly because I imagine with Mass Effect it's difficult because of all the choices, which multiple endings and things like that is actually another video I need to make. But there's so many games out there that you could actually turn into a genuinely great book, and I think people would benefit from being able to read it. So yeah, post in the comments, say your ideas, maybe we'll get the movement, maybe that'll be the next big adaptation craze, instead of turning everything into a movie, and the movie being as awful as Mario Galaxy, instead of turning everything into a series, which thankfully the Fallout series is at least good so far, I'm enjoying it, instead of turning it into things to just sit down and watch, give us the ability to sit down and read instead, because you can do a lot in books, and as much as people struggle with imagination, and there's a lot of people out there who do actually lack this ability, like I think it's aphantasia is what it's called, when you can't visualize anything. That's part of my problem with the head injury. It kind of robbed my ability to visualize stuff. It still hasn't robbed my enjoyment of books. It just means that I have to work differently, I guess, my inner workings of how I actually read things and how I conjure up images and how I conjure up scenes. And sometimes I do actually use video games as a simile. As weird as it might sound, there will be times where I'm like, you know what, the way they're describing this is kind of like an area from this game. So, you know what? This is now the Spencer Mansion from Resident Evil. That's the mansion that I'm in. You know, I'll be able to do things like that based on that, and that's how I essentially use memory of games to imagine, as weird as it might be. There's a lot that you can actually do with books, though, that you can't do in other mediums. The same as how there's a lot you can do in video games you can't do in other mediums. So I really do feel this is kind of an overlooked idea. I don't know why people don't seem to do this. I honestly don't. Maybe there just, at the moment, isn't enough demand for it. But I'm really hoping one day there will be enough demand. And with that, this very long, waffly video is coming to an end. I've been Sky Fellowship. I truly do hope you have a great rest of your day. And one day, I would love to actually understand everything that I'm actually doing in one of my favourite games of all time. Right, until next time, see ya. Bye.